Start, Prabhuji.
Today's session number, Prabhu? I think session number 4, 5. Okay. Reading from the book on speaking strongly in Srila Prabhupada's service by His Holiness Bhakti Vikasa Swami, chapter number 23. Restraint, caution, and indirect preaching. There are many dedicated preachers. There are many dedicated preachers who deliberately eschew confrontational methods, considering them more likely to alienate than to enlighten. They deliberately adopt a restrained manner, whereby they aim to impress people that Krishna consciousness is nice within quotes, and to induce them to gradually accept it. Particularly for the many persons who are at least somewhat open to spiritual messages, a cautious approach is meant to accommodate and foster their pious inclinations rather than push them too hard too soon at the risk of crushing them. Proponents of this indirect style argue that it is necessary for reaching a wider audience. The very nature of conditional existence is that people are inclined to accept only that which appeals to their perverse outlook. The message of Krishna consciousness, of forswearing sense gratification and surrendering to Krishna, is decidedly unappealing to their perverse outlook, and thus very few people are sufficiently sincere or fortunate to immediately accept much of the Bhagavata teachings. Therefore, preachers of mildness advocate the administering of truth in small palatable doses in the hope that open-minded and intelligent individuals will gradually accept Krishna consciousness to some extent, whereas it is postulated that too much of the absolute truth given all at once to non-devotees would make more likely drive them away forever. Some preachers deem it wise as a prelude to attempting to induce direct Krishna consciousness to try to win people's confidence by sharing casual talk with them, offering them prasad, and generally attempting to put them at ease. Carefully averting discord by not disturbing false egos and speaking what people like to hear rather than what they need to hear. Such preachers shun confrontation and controversy. They might also try to capture the attention of shallow persons by, for instance, making jokes or telling stories. This type of friendly approach certainly has its utility, for instance, in greeting first-time visitors to an ISKCON centers who are more likely to be curious than to be truth seekers. By affability and genuine concern, their style seeks to make it easy for people to make the often difficult transition from their present manner of thinking and acting so that they may incrementally adopt the understanding and behavior of pure devotees. Generally, even preachers who are committed to straightforwardness first try to strike some rapport with people rather than battering them from the outset. As is practically observed, by careful cultivation, many people have been brought to Krishna consciousness who probably would not have come via an instant zapping. Also, for people uninterested in philosophy yet happy to perform service, it is best to get them started in that way. Another track in discussing with non-devotees, especially other religionists, is to seek to find points of similarity. This might be a good start, but mere arrangement and agreeableness is insufficient. Preaching of Krishna consciousness should ultimately aim at demonstrating its superiority over all other theorems, and therefore to not go beyond the striking of common ground hardly constitutes preaching at all. An extension of the sociable method is to wholly indirect preaching, which is designed to bring people into contact with devotees, gradually befriend them, and then introduce them step by step to Krishna consciousness. Thus, some devotees offer courses in subjects such as yoga exercises and time management that have nothing to do with devotional service, and for that very reason appeal to a great number of people than would an undisguised presentation of Krishna consciousness. Proponents of indirect preaching generally cite Srila Prabhupada's statement, within quotes, an acharya should devise a means by which people may somehow or other come to Krishna consciousness. First, they should become Krishna conscious, and all the prescribed rules and regulations may later gradually be introduced. End of the quote. Such tactics, although in many circumstances unnecessarily, can be legitimate if, as Srila Prabhupada cautions in the above purport, within quotes, the ultimate goal is never neglected. End of the quote. Indirect preaching can be effective if undertaken with a clear understanding of the principle of total surrender to Krishna, and also with a clear plan for bringing people to that platform. Without such understanding and commitment, indirect preaching, even if helpful in bringing many persons to Krishna consciousness, cannot bring them to pure, unmixed Krishna consciousness. By popularizing Krishna consciousness mixed with extraneous ideas and processes, indirect preaching tends to foster bhakti mixed with misconceptions and material desires, and to thus obscure the actual process and become a deviation. In other words, the endeavor to bring more people to Krishna consciousness by making various adjustments becomes meaningless if by making adjustments we end up with something different than Krishna consciousness. Indeed, the very stratagem of tweaking the presentation as a concession to the diseased, conditioned mentality is itself a kind of compromise. The preacher himself becomes compromised if, in making others feel comfortable, he becomes enamored by their favorable responses, and thus, as a policy, never tells them what they really need to hear. Such a policy is condemned by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. स्वयं निःश्रेयसं विद्वान् न व्यक्ति अज्ञान्य कर्म हि नरातिरगिनोपथ्यं वांछितोऽपि विचक्ष्मतः. A pure devotee who is fully accomplished in the science of devotional service will never instruct a foolish person to engage in fruitive activities for material enjoyment, not to speak of helping him in such activities. Such a devotee is like an experienced physician who never encourages a patient to eat food injurious to his health, even if the patient desires it. Devotees should understand the obvious point that preaching Krishna consciousness means to preach Krishna Upadesh, the instructions of Krishna, and that to present anything else does not actually constitute preaching of Krishna consciousness, even if it is intended to lead to actual preaching of Krishna consciousness. To committedly avoid speaking Krishna Upadesh, to not discuss philosophy, To not state the difference between truth and falsity, between right and wrong, means to subscribe to the common impersonalistic norm of accepting people as they are, no matter what their outlook is, thus implying that philosophy is unimportant and Krishna consciousness is not a compelling necessity but merely one path among many. Therefore, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati considered it a defect if a preacher was overly anxious to accommodate others. Everyone is eager for adoration by others, not for absolute truth. Those who make a show of being preachers do not disturb mankind but rather maintain everyone's present mentality while busily protecting their own existence. Therefore, there is no propagation of the truth since one's popularity is not served by speaking or hearing the truth. And as quoted previously, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati defined the constant function of a chanter of Hari Kirtan as being to dispel all misconceptions by preaching the truth in its most unambiguous form, without any consideration of person, place, or time. Srila Prabhupada lived according to that policy. His aim was not to share intellectual pleasantries, but to convince others of the veracity of his message. Whenever anyone would come to see him, Prabhupada would waste time. He talked philosophy with reason and argument. He constantly argued against atheism and impersonalism. He spoke strongly to prove the existence of God and universality of Krishna consciousness. He talked often and vigorously day and night, meeting all kinds of questions and philosophies. Even during Srila Prabhupada's manifest presence, a subgroup of his disciples, headed by Siddhaswarupananda Swami, regularly criticized Orthodox ISKCON devotees for their strong preaching tactics. Siddhaswarupananda's people had their own approach, which was designed to avoid generating controversy with the public. When Guru Krupa Swami opined that they were not following what Prabhupada was doing, but he created their own way to spread Krishna consciousness, Srila Prabhupada agreed. Yes, that idea is there, although he's always encouraged them to chant and maintain the regulative principles. Srila Prabhupada frankly analyzed that Srila Siddhaswarupananda and his followers were thinking of their own way that is bad. Expressing faith in Srila Prabhupada's direction, Guru Krupa Swami said, "You know how to spread Krishna consciousness. Therefore, I follow. I don't even know what Krishna is. I'm just trying to follow. Therefore, that will be successful. That is my preaching." Srila Prabhupada responded, "What Krishna said, you say it as it is. You say as it is. Don't change. How you can give interpretation? And if he thinks that he can give another interpretation, what is this nonsense? Then he is not following Guru or Krishna or both. One has to receive the mercy of Guru and Krishna. Through Guru, Krishna's mercy. Notwithstanding present Krishna consciousness in a manner calculated to appeal to a defective mentality can be effective for bringing apathetic or seriously deluded people, that is, who constitute the vast majority of world's population, into contact with Krishna consciousness. This approach is acceptable according to Srila Prabhupada's direction, that we either defeat challenges or turn them into friends. Narad Muni's upliftment of Dhruva offers an example of how, by indirect preaching, an expert preacher can deliver even a person who is far from pure devotional service, and that it is not necessary to begin all exchanges forcibly if persons are eventually brought to the right point. Devotees who are more inclined to restraint than to brazeness can certainly perform important services for spreading the holy name and creating a favorable situation for the propagation of Krishna consciousness. However, they should not resent those who speak strongly, but should recognize the essential role that such outspoken devotees play. And those who advocate the initial dispensation of mild dosages of must not fail to elevate their spiritual wards to the point of accepting the full dose. Small doses of truth should prepare persons for the full absolute truth, not for avoiding it or being content with partial truths. To give sugar coated pills without substance is cheating. The bulk of the pill must be pure medicine. This principle is as valid in spiritual treatment as it is in medical care. As a god brother wrote me in 2011, a prominent doctor was recently arrested here in San Diego. He was given a severe sentence and is condemned by all. What was his shocking and debased crime? He was secretly watering down expensive cancer medicines to the point they had no effect. If we do the same to the life saving message of our acharyas, aren't we also criminal? It may seem axiomatic that to make friends is better than make enemies. But according to the example of our acharyas, it is distinctly better to be known as an enemy of envious persons like Mayavadis than to make friends with them, which is positively dangerous. The real crux of preaching Krishna consciousness. The real crux of preaching is the attempt to convince others of the reality and effectiveness of Krishna consciousness. If we become overly concerned with what the karmis think, becoming involved in the likes and dislikes of others, then we cannot possibly present the simple truth. Notwithstanding that various devotees have differing styles, every preacher's task is to impart to the uninformed the understanding that Krishna consciousness affords a compellingly distinctive and meaningful perspective that at the very least warrants their thoughtful consideration. A further danger of low key approach is that by descending to the platform of those he is meant to uplift, the devotee becomes affected by their consciousness and thereby compromised into acting, talking, and ultimately thinking like them. By connecting with others at their level of triviality, he trivializes he trivializes the incalculably profound message of Krishna consciousness. If he speaks in the humdrum manner that others are accustomed to, they will reply in their usual stereotyped way and will treat the devotee as another mundane person who with no benefit to either party. Hence, bolder preachers who deliberately violate the unspoken social rule of keeping conversation light and thus unthreatening to people's insipid, insubstantial existence, thereby protect themselves while attempting to uplift others.
I can take it from here, Prabhu, if you don't mind. We still have few
Yes, Prabhu?
pages. I can pick it from here if you want.
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah? Thank you so much. If it is assumed that devotees should not speak robustly when newcomers are present, then our public speaking will remain forever diluted. According to that outlook, any lecture given to devotees, while even one new person were also present, would have to be ratcheted down to insipidity. But the outspoken preacher considers that unless the clear message is spoken consistently, people are likely to get it. People are unlikely to get it. and that the tactic of starting weekly with a plan to later switch to strong delivery is more likely to confuse people than convince them. People are already confused and in ignorance, so we need to make things clear for them. Without doing so, they will simply remain confused. Other problem is not giving our message clearly is that we ourselves lose clear understanding of it and we lose our uniqueness. We then become like other spiritual groups and our preaching tend to descend to socially acceptable but spiritually useless sub-religious principles such as vegetarianism and friendly dealings. At the very least, speaking the plain truth should not be inordinately delayed, because in and of itself, friendly talking cannot decide any serious question. It does not come to any conclusion. While waiting for others to be ready for the real message, we or they could die, or they might lose interest in associating with devotees. Srila Prabhupada instructed Gargamuni Das, who had been flattering a life member, that it is all right to flatter such people until they become a life member, but thereafter he should preach to them. Speaking the plain truth also serves as a litmus test for revealing the underlying offensiveness or insincerity of persons who initially seem friendly towards devotee but are actually disinclined to make any serious attempts to improve themselves in Krishna consciousness. As soon as you speak plain truth, they will go away. If you go on flattering, then they will stay. The difficulty is that we want to be cheated, and there are so many cheaters. If they find that here is a man, he can be easily cheated, they take advantage. As soon as you say, you surrender to Krishna, he will not take it very nicely. Why shall I surrender? This is too much. This means he wants to be cheated. Why shall you surrender to Krishna? You are independent. Why are you are becoming dependent on God? Why are becoming dependent on God? You are working hard. Why are you giving credit to God? Krishna. Even if devotees choose not to directly call the non-devotees rogues or rascals, they should at least know that non-devotees definitely are rogues and rascals. All these leaders, all these rascals, they are all rascals. At least you must know. You may behave gentlemanly, that is your duty. But you should know that he is a rascal number one. If we also become enamored by the so called scientists, politicians, and philosophers, then we cannot preach. We must definitely be convinced that they are all rascals. As a gentleman, I can give him some respect. That's another thing. But he is a rascal. You must know that. I'm talking with a rascal number one. He cannot deviate me from my position, but I can talk in a nice way, gentlemanly. That is another thing. That is courtesy. But I know that these rascals, number one fools, they have no idea. You must know that they are all rascal, unbelievers. You have to convert them to be sane men. That is preaching. Although it might seem safer to not risk provoking others, it is questionable now how how much others can be benefited by a preacher's withholding from them the facts that they need to know. Certainly, it's spiritually safer for himself and unquestionably auspicious for others if a devotee maintains the principle of always presenting Krishna consciousness straightforwardly. Ideally, devotees should be conservative in their own practice of devotional service and in understanding of Siddhanta, and also liberal in making Krishna consciousness available to persons who are far removed from it. Devotees need not be so conservative as to insist that things always be done in the same way in all circumstances, regardless of the outcome. Real preachers have to be sensitive to people and circumstances and sufficiently flexible to make adjustments as required for bringing people to Krishna consciousness. They should aspire for the expertise of Srila Prabhupada and Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati in maintaining the core principles of Krishna consciousness while promulgating it with an innovative spirit based on the maxim Falena parichiyate, judge by the result. 24. Soft and hard. Just one second. Anybody who wants to read, also, please put a small message in the chat window and we'll come back to you. Yeah. 24. Soft and hard. Devotees who consider the radical approach to be incongruous with the sweetness of Krishna consciousness should consider that Lord Chaitanya was not only as soft as a flower, but could also be as hard as a thunderbolt. It may be difficult to comprehend how the all merciful Lord can be both hard and soft, since softness of heart is the inherent nature of the soul, and thus the prime characteristic of a devotee, and is naturally expected to be overwhelmingly manifest in the Lord's most magnanimous descent as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. However, these opposing qualities can easily be understood in terms of the Lord's transcendental nature and purpose. A devotee's softness can manifest as hardness towards all that is not Krishna conscious, and as the hardness necessary for preaching Krishna consciousness in a hard way. Followers of Lord Chaitanya need not always preach like a thunderbolt, but neither should they always be like a flower. To opine that devotee should only be soft like a flower and never hard like a thunderbolt indicate a superficial, imbalanced understanding of Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada, the ideal follower of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, was decorated with innumerable flower like transcendental qualities and was undoubtedly the greatest saintly person. Yet, like a thunderbolt, he untiringly lambasted the demons and relished doing so. Quote, Srila Prabhupada, these animals are passing on as big scientists, philosophers, theologians, and so on. We have to stop them. Namam dushkritno muda prapadyante naradhama. This is the qualification of a person who does not accept God. Dushkritina naradhama muda mayaya partha jnana. Although highly educated, no knowledge. Asuram bhavam ashrita, simply atheist. So, as Krishna conscious leaders, we have to punish them, chastise these rascals. They are demons. Giriraj. It's actually relishable to chastise them. Srila Prabhupada, yes, laughs. It's a pleasure sport. That is my business, to punish all these rascals. I become very angry if anyone says before me, I am God, he is God, everyone. I cannot control myself. Laughter. Yes, I am so obstinate enemy of these rascals. I want to kick them on their face, but it is incivility. But I want to kick them. It will be my pleasure. Never mind, I go to hell. End quote. However, just as a devotee should not merely be soft, neither should be exclusively hard. A devotee may be hard externally, but should be soft internally. One who is only hard is hardly a devotee, for implacable hardness typifies demons. Yet it is doubtful whether those who are so soft as to not like to fight for Krishna even when he is misrepresented and blasphemed actually have any feeling for him. Devotees need not and should not emulate those pseudo sadhus who present themselves as being mild and humble just to enjoy being respected and to avoid the censure that is inevitably directed at truth, true sadhus who, being deeply concerned for the suffering jivas, speak in a manner intended to shatter the misconceptions at the root of their sufferings. Devotees who by nature are soft can also become bold if they are sincere. Quote, you mention that you are not yet a very bold preacher, but you will become bold if you have got sincerity. In the beginning also, I could not speak, but Krishna is within you, and when you are serving him sincerely, he will give you courage, boldness, everything. We are not going to bluff anyone or cheat others, and we are delivering the message on behalf of the Supreme Lord. So we haven't got anything to fear, and we should be always mindful of our topmost position of occupation of life. Any taker? Asit Prabhu? Anyone? Please text if you want, otherwise I'll read. 25. Positive and negative. A positive approach in preaching may be defined as one in which hearers are presented with aspects of Krishna consciousness that are likely to appeal to them, that promise to enhance their life without adding difficulties. A negative approach may be defined as one that stresses that everything and everyone without Krishna consciousness is useless, foolish, and wicked. Good. I will give the mic to Asit Prabhu. Others also highly encourage. Please take a uh, initiative sometime. Asit Prabhu, see if you can unmute yourself and pick it up.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Am I audible, right?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay.
Surely it may seem.
Yeah. Surely it may seem it is better to present a positive outlook. Why not emphasize the joy and sweetness of bhakti? What need is there for pointing out others' faults and dwelling on the miseries of material existence? Why be habitually negative? Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati had a different understanding. The truth, Satya, is propagated in a twofold way, viz. Positively by the method of direct support and negatively by the method of opposition. The truth cannot be made sufficiently known by the positive method alone. Propaganda by the method of opposition, more than the presentation of the positive aspect, brings about more brilliantly in this world the appearance and glorification of the truth. The positive method by itself is not the most effective method of propaganda in a controversial age like the present. The negative method, which seeks to differentiate the truth from non truth in all its forms, is even better calculated to convey the directly inconceivable significance of the absolute. It is a necessity which cannot be conscientiously avoided by the dedicated preacher of the truth if he wants to be a loyal servant of Godhead. The method is sure to create an atmosphere of controversy in which it is quite easy to lose one's balance of judgment. But the ways of the deluding energy are so intricate that unless their mischievous nature is fully exposed, it is not possible for the soul in the conditioned state to avoid the snares spread by the enchantress Maya for encompassing the ruin of her only two willing victims. It is a duty which shall be sacred to all who have been enabled to attain even a distant glimpse of the Absolute. Once a woman wrote to Srila Prabhupada complaining that she had met two of his young disciples and had a very negative outlook. In reply, Srila Prabhupada explained, in order to withstand the attack of Maya and remain strong under all conditions of temptation, young or inexperienced devotees in the neophyte stage of devotional service will sometimes adopt an attitude against those things or persons which may possibly be harmful or threatening to their tender devotional creepers. They may even overindulge in such feelings just to protect themselves, and thus they will appear to some known devotees who are perhaps themselves still very much enamored by the material energy of Maya to be negative or pessimistic. But the actual fact is that this material world is a miserable, negative place full of danger at every step. It is dukhalayam ashashvatam, a temporary abode of death, birth, disease, and old age, a home of suffering and pain only. To come to the platform of understanding these things as they are is not very common, and therefore persons who attain to it are described as great souls. Mam upetya punarjanma dukkhalayam ashashvatama napnuvanti mahatmana samsiddhim paramam gata. This means that those who have understood that the material worlds are places of misery and temporality, dukhalayam ashashvatama, never return here again. And because they are Mahatmana, the great souls, Krishna keeps them with him because they have qualified themselves to escape this nasty place by becoming his pure devotees. This verse is spoken by Krishna or God Himself in the Bhagavad Gita. Who can be a more final authority? The point is that to make advancement in spiritual life, one must view everything material with a pessimistic eye, unless it is utilized to serve and please Krishna. We are not very much hopeful for any lasting pleasure or satisfaction for our deepest cravings within this realm of gross matter. When questioned if his outlook was negative, Srila Prabhupada replied, why negative? It is the fact. That is the positive understanding. Why do you take it as negative? If you are suffering and if I say, don't suffer, is that negative or that is positive? Bali Mardana. In other words, if you are suffering and I tell you don't suffer, it may sound negative, but actually it's positive. Srila Prabhupada. Yes, positive. But they are rascals. They are taking it as negative. Certainly, Krishna consciousness is the only true positivity. Yet it cannot be entered without negating the negative. Srila Prabhupada repeatedly pointed out that all that is materially desirable, such as wealth, beauty, friends, and education, are all zeros. Yet he often tempered this seeming negativity by further stating that by placing a one, the one Krishna, in front of all those zeros, they become transformed into millions. While requesting people to just add Krishna to their lives, Srila Prabhupada averred, we never say to stop everything material, yet qualified this by continuing, but we have to stop anything which is against Krishna consciousness, such as meat eating. It thus appears that even when presenting Krishna consciousness in what could be termed a positive manner, Srila Prabhupada did not try to hide certain essential aspects of Krishna consciousness that are unlikely to appeal to many people. Adding Krishna is a beginning, but to really advance in Krishna consciousness requires an eventual wholesale change of outlook and conduct. On the other hand, that Srila Prabhupada did not approve of habitual one sided negativity that neglects to present the positive is indicated in the following anecdote. One morning, Tamal Krishna Goswami related that the lecturer in the temple had, along with speaking on other topics, criticized false gurus. Srila Prabhupada became displeased and said, we must be positive and speak about real gurus. This criticizing tendency will not attract. We must ourselves be ideal. Chapter 26, Unpalatable Truth. अनुद्वेगकरं वाक्यं सत्यं प्रियहितं च यत् स्वाध्यायाभ्यासनं चैव Vanmayam tapa uchyate. Austerity of speech consists in speaking words that are truthful, pleasing, beneficial, and not agitating to others, and also in regularly reciting Vedic literature. This austerity of speech is symptomatic of Sattva Guna, the mode of goodness. In his purport to this verse, Srila Prabhupada states, one should not speak in such a way as to agitate the minds of others. Of course, when a teacher speaks, he can speak the truth for the instruction of his students. But such a teacher should not speak to those who are not his students if he will agitate their minds. Similarly, a well known Vedic guideline prioritizes pleasantness over truth. Satyam bruyat priyam bruyat, ma bruyat satyam apriyam. Speak truthfully, speak palatably, do not speak unpalatable truths. These are general recommendations for social dealings among cultured people. Ideally, all that is spoken should be very sweet to hear, full of meaning, appropriately presented, and perfectly true. However, such an ideal is only realizable among persons who are ready to accept the truth. For the message of ultimate truth tends to upset rather than to please. Often one must choose whether to speak the truth or to speak pleasingly, or to not speak at all to persons who are likely to become agitated by hearing the truth. Particularly on the platform of service to God, the principle of speaking the truth overrides that of speaking palatably. When you speak of higher truths, you don't care whether it is palatable to others or not. Satyam. Truthfulness means the fact that facts should be presented as they are for the benefit of others. Facts should not be misrepresented. According to social conventions, it is said that one can speak the truth only when it is palatable to others. But that is not truthfulness. The truth should be spoken in a straightforward way so that others will understand actually what the facts are. If a man is a thief and if people are warned that he is a thief, that is truth. Although sometimes the truth is unpalatable, one should not refrain from speaking it. Truthfulness demands that the facts be presented as they are for the benefit of others. That is the definition of truth. People may not like it, it may be very unpalatable, but the fact is like that. Satyam bruyat priyam bruyat, ma bruyat satyam apriyam. It is social convention that if you want to speak truth, you speak truth very palatable, flattering. Don't speak unpalatable truth. But we are not meant for that purpose. Social convention. We are preacher. We are servant of God. We must speak the real truth. You may like it or may not like it. This stance is corroborated by the Vishnu Puran, which immediately after a verse that parallels Manu's Satyam Bruyat qualifies it by stating Priyamuktam hitam netad iti matva na tad vadet shreyastatra hitam vakyam yadyapi atyantam apriyam. One should not speak that which is pleasant but unbeneficial. Better to say that which is beneficial even though it is exceedingly unpleasant. Srila Prabhupada discussed these principles in correspondence with Sumati Morariji. Sumati Morarji, a follower of Vallabhacharya, who had taken umbrage at a back to Godhead article describing Lord Chaitanya's comparing Vallabhacharya to an unfaithful wife. Srila Prabhupada apologized. It is certainly unpleasant, but the officers who publish the magazine do not know. Satyam bruyat priyam bruyat. He went on to state that the cause of Lord Chaitanya's agitation was much the same as Mrs. Morarji's. As you are irritated by the criticism of Sri Vallabhacharya, similarly, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was also agitated when Vallabhacharya criticized Sridhar Swami. Srila Prabhupada explained that Lord Chaitanya and Vallabhacharya were friends, and that their arguing may be compared to the wrangling of two lawyers in a courtroom. After the parley, they again relate as friends. Srila Prabhupada's concluding remarks serve as a guide to Vaishnava etiquette when dealing with delicate controversial topics. Devotees always humbly offer respect to everyone, but when there is a discussion on a point of Shastra, they do not observe the usual etiquette. Satyam bruyat, priyam bruyat. They speak only the Satyam, although it may not necessarily be priyam, pleasing. Elsewhere, Shastra states, Priyam uktam hitam naitat iti matva na tad vadet shreyastad rahitam vakyam yadyapi atyanta vipriyam. A statement that seems pleasant but that is not actually beneficial should not be uttered. But even if extremely unpleasant, the ultimate good should be spoken. In the above quoted correspondence, Srila Prabhupada expertly asserted the truth, Satyam, without compromise, without backing down from his position, yet did it pleasingly, Priyam. This should be the standard for devotees who are highly concerned with being pleasing, even though that was not Srila Prabhupada's prime concern. The Satyam Bruyat verse may also be understood as a direction to speak the truth in a manner meant to benefit others. To speak the truth but with the intention to exploit others or for self promotion, to flaunt one's own qualities or achievements, or to pose as a great preacher does not serve the cause of the acharyas or please Krishna. Similarly, to speak the truths of Shastra in a harsh and mean spirited manner, meant to harm the persons spoken to or others being spoken about, is influenced by the mode of ignorance and is as bad or worse than untruth. It cannot bring people toward Krishna, and it is more likely to drive them away. Chapter 27, Discretion and Fact. Along with the need to present Krishna consciousness clearly and spiritedly, another important principle is discretion is the better part of valor, which Srila Prabhupada sometimes quoted. An important feature of a Madhyam Adhikari, which distinguishes him from a neophyte, is that he is careful not to fall into the pit of false arguments. He chooses his battles and does not get entangled in useless squabbles. For instance, over trivialities or with fanatical Christians. A seasoned preacher also tends to concentrate his efforts on persons who are most likely to accept the Krishna conscious message, knowing that many people are highly impervious to it. While rendering first aid service in the battlefield, the Red Cross men, although equally disposed to all the wounded soldiers, give first preference to the hopeful ones. The hopeless ones are sometimes neglected. Srila Prabhupada also cited the Bengali maxim, enter like a needle and come out like a plow. Certain circumstances particularly call for prudence and diplomacy, such as in countries whose oppressive governments disfavor devotees, or to avoid unnecessarily alienating influential persons. And although all devotees are mandated to preach Krishna consciousness strongly and distinctly, those who spend much of their lives in secular situations generally cannot speak as freely as can full time dedicated preachers. For instance, in many cases, it would not be advisable for devotees who are employed in an office or factory, attending college, or transacting business to preach forthrightly and thus risk respectively being fired, being expelled, or losing financial deals. Similarly, interacting with non devotee relatives may also warrant restraint. During his years as a married man doing business, Srila Prabhupada mostly preached by assisting various of his god brothers who were full time preachers, and via his strident Back to Godhead magazine. This fact, however, does not negate the overall thesis of this book, for even during his household life, Srila Prabhupada was high spirited. For example, sometimes he would urge a certain sannyasi godbrother to accompany him in charging Gandhi and Nehru as to why they were not following the principles of the Bhagavad Gita. Thus, the need for tact is by no means a call to compromise. Rather, it entails a sense of knowing the right moment and method for presenting delicate points in a manner conducive for their acceptance. In the following letter, Srila Prabhupada outlined a method of carefully outlining philosophical arguments and thereby preparing listeners to hear unwelcome facts. If we speak the naked truth to the people, sometimes they may get angry because unpalatable truth is not tolerated. If we call a black man black, he will be angry because it is unpalatable. So we have to present our case very carefully. The best way of presentation will be like this. First, yoga system is recommended in the Bhagavad Gita. Second, it is an approved system. Third, but it is not suitable for ordinary man, especially in this age of Kali. Fourth, the so-called yoga system practiced by the people of this age is not bona fide. They cannot follow all the rules and regulations of yoga practice. Fifth, therefore, it is conclusive that the so-called yoga followers are simply cheated and they are wasting their time. I have already explained these points in the Sankhya Yoga chapter of the Bhagavad Gita as it is, so you read them carefully and present it point by point in suitable occasions. In another letter, Srila Prabhupada promoted boldness, yet also endorsed specifically palatable presentations if they were faithful to the spiritual authorities and actually effective in convincing others. Our presentation of Krishna consciousness must be always very bold. If we are king, we must act like king. Still, it was my method to make Krishna consciousness palatable to you, Western boys and girls. How else could I attract you to give up your habits of sense gratification? Krishna philosophy can be approached from every angle because it is the complete whole, Purnam. So, if your scientific explanation, beginning from the point that sound vibration is the root cause of everything and leading to the understanding that Krishna is the cause of the sound vibration, is having good effect, why not continue in this way? Only thing is to remain true to the authorities, Krishna, the great saints, and acharyas. And everything you say will come out nicely. People are of different natures. So we have to use our talents how to convince people in different circumstances. Best is if devotees can impart the genuine message of Krishna consciousness to people without disturbing them. Footnote that to do so is not always possible has been stated at various places in this book. Um, the highest development of Krishna conscious understanding will be when you are able to give anyone the truth, but in such a manner that they will respond in a positive way. The idea is not what you are saying so much as how you say it. If you understand this properly, then you may be able to say the truth at all times in the most palatable way, according to the situation and the type of hearer. Similarly, Prabhupada wrote, we have to speak the truth, but very palatably. In the following exchange, Srila Prabhupada resolved the apparent dichotomy between straightforwardness and tact.
Prabhu,
Paramahamsa.
Prabhu,
Yes.
I just wanted to take a pause. Well, it's a pretty large chapter.
Okay,
If
okay.
you agree, we can take it up tomorrow.
Yeah, Prabhu, please. We can
Yeah,
take it to. Yes, yes.
yeah. I think because it will not end here. Thank you so much all for joining in. I really encourage others also to come forward for reading. If and We have in the system one more session for tomorrow, but we'll get added because I think it will take another two minimum sessions for us to finish the book. Maybe even part of third. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. And as we mentioned, try to encourage others to also participate in this. It's such a brilliant text, such a brilliant analysis on how what to do, how to do, and it's definitely improve the preaching style each of us are having. Yeah. So thank you so much. We'll continue tomorrow. Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavnebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. We come to the end of broadcast. Hare Krishna.